Are you on a journey of healing from childhood trauma, or maybe thinking about starting it? If so, this video is for you. Welcome. I'm Peggy Oliveira. Thanks so much for joining me. As both survivors and as somebody helping people heal from childhood trauma, there are different pieces of this journey that can be challenging. And there's one that is challenging on both sides, I think. And that can be, as a survivor, really struggling with basically the process that you do the things that you think you're supposed to do, and you find that you still struggle. You find that maybe you've made progress for a little while, and then you feel like you take a lot of steps backward. That's frustrating for you as a survivor. As a person who helps people heal, it's not frustrating because it's expected, it's normal, there's nothing wrong about that. What's hard about it, as somebody who helps people heal, is the level of disappointment, judgment, self-criticism, and shame that people often end up experiencing as a result of feeling that they are not moving through the process in the way that they think they should. And that is hard as somebody who tries to help people heal because, well, for one, I know what that feels like. I know what it feels like to be in that place of shame and judgment and hopelessness and all of that. But it's also kind of hard because I know that that it is part of the process, that those seeming setbacks are not in fact setbacks, that knowing something is not enough to change it, whether it's knowing that it's not your fault or knowing what the healthy coping mechanisms are that you could use. I fully understand that knowing is not enough, that you have to practice, and not just practice for a week or even a month, but when you've been engaging in coping mechanisms for your entire life, basically, it can sometimes take a year or longer, oftentimes longer, to kind of shift how you tend to cope. And that's really true for virtually all aspects of healing. And to see people in that place of really feeling the disappointment in themselves or the shame that they often experience, it's kind of heartbreaking sometimes to witness that. Now, I wouldn't change it for anything, but that can be a hard part of this. Like sometimes people ask about, isn't it so hard to do this work? And generally speaking, I would say, no, it's not. But that is sometimes one of the challenging things that can come about on this journey as a mentor. So I've talked in different ways on different videos about the healing process, that it's not linear, that there are no real setbacks. I've talked about a lot of that. I've talked about shame in various aspects. But today I'm sharing with you just kind of some of the ideas about the process of healing and some of the things that I think are fairly important on this healing journey. And part of the reason I'm talking about this is that I've just recently launched the Returning to Wholeness Journal course. And within that course, it's a self-paced course that you would work through on your own. But it's kind of a journal, workbook, guidebook. It's kind of a combination of things. But as I created it, which I originally created for the membership that I launched a few years ago and decided that wasn't really for me, but in that context or in that way, I suppose, in the way that I was doing it. But I've taken part of that and kind of captured the, I think, most meaningful aspect of that and crafted a course that you can work through on your own. But within that, I took the things that I think are really foundational on this healing journey. And when I say foundational, I'm not just talking about like the beginning stages, like what you need to have in place in order to move forward. Though all of this is helpful, it is also all something that you continue to build on, right? If you're building a house, you build a foundation and then you continue to build on top of it. You have to create new structural pieces within the house as well, right? So you don't just build a foundation and everything else is just kind of going to be structurally sound on its own. You have to continue to add other pieces to that house to make it structurally sound. But if the foundation is weak, then it doesn't matter what you're doing above it, it's not going to be sturdy. So I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the things that are a part of this. And whether you join me in returning to wholeness or not, you can just kind of think about this for your own journey, generally speaking, as well. So first, recognizing that there are things that you need to learn as you navigate healing. There are a lot of things to learn. And I would say probably for the majority of you, you probably know a lot of this already. A lot of what you need to know in order to heal on a cognitive level. Now, there might certainly be some things that you don't know yet, and that's perfectly okay and reasonable. But I know for a lot of you, you've done a lot of reading, you've watched a lot of videos, and so you know on a cognitive level a lot of things, right? That's important. But the healing happens through experiencing, and that is a large part of the practice that I talk about. So you have to be able to experience things in addition to knowing them, because when you experience what you know, it becomes real. It becomes part of the foundation that you can continue to build on. And so all the pieces in, I think really everything that I create, or course type stuff that I create, but with returning to wholeness, each chapter has an important aspect to it, important to understand, important to practice, important to become aware of. And that can be part of your foundation. But as you continue to build, if you were to go back and do the chapter again, what you take from that chapter 6 months later, or a year later, or even just a few months later, what you're able to kind of extract from it, what you're able to feel a connection to, even how you understand it, shifts because you're moving along this healing journey. And as you continue to move along the healing journey, you're able to incorporate and internalize things differently and, generally speaking, at a deeper level. And so no matter what reading you might be doing, whatever course you might be doing, or even in therapy itself, that is how the actual process of healing works. Now, obviously, the stuff that you're taking in needs to be accurate information. It needs to be things that make sense to you on some level, even if you don't fully understand how. But the more that you practice it, the more that you revisit it, the more beneficial, generally speaking, it's going to become. And the Returning to Wholeness course is meant for no matter where you are along the journey, and it is also meant to be something that you return to periodically. It could be at different stages of your healing. It could be when you're struggling a little bit more. But it's concepts, it's practices, it's things to consider in terms of how you view yourself. There are daily pages within it to help you become really aware of what's happening in your daily life that's impacting you. What are you taking from those experiences? All of that and more, but all of that is so important as part of the practicing that's necessary for healing. And I thought, whether you end up doing returning to wholeness or not, I thought I would just share with you some of the kind of chapter ideas within the course to give you a little bit of a sense of some of the things that I think are important along this healing journey. So I'm just looking at it over here. So each chapter, I have kind of a mantra, and some might call it an affirmation. And if you follow me for a while, you know how I can kind of feel a little bit about affirmations. But I think of them more in terms of like a mantra, because it's something to kind of, you're not trying to tell yourself that something is true. You're repeating, you're allowing space for something to come in that you accept may be true, even if you don't necessarily feel it now. So I'm actually gonna put my glasses on because I can't see very well. I actually have the whole course available in the chapters on my tablet here. So with the course, there's a welcome, and that I think can be helpful just to kind of settle in. I think if you've done any sort of like workshop with me or a group call or something like that, you know, very often we kind of start by just settling in together. And I think, you know, if you're doing some reading, if you're reading a book about something, if you're doing a workbook or something like that, giving yourself the space to settle in before you do any sort of work, I think is important, because you're kind of letting yourself focus. You're kind of calming your nervous system a little bit before you get started so that you have the capacity to really be in the space emotionally and energetically to take in what it is that you're actually doing. So there are 3 sections within the course, and the first one is honoring my path. The second one is nourishing heart, mind, body, and soul. And then the last one is connecting within. So there's 3 different sections there, and then 2 to 3 chapters within each. But for example, with honoring my path, I am not the wound or the struggle. Like, just even thinking about that. I am not the wound or the struggle. How often do you think of yourself based on how you feel about the fact that you struggle or that you experienced trauma? If you're like most people, probably quite often. So being able to continue to practice accepting the reality, I am not the wound or the struggle. I'm not going to go through all of these, but another one in another chapter, I am ready to trust in the truth of who I am. And on the surface, that's like, okay, great. But really think about it. I am ready to trust in the truth of who I am. So this chapter is about getting to a place energetically where you can accept that as reality. Because it's one thing to say, I am worthy, right? And even if you're aware that there might be a counter thought to that immediately after, recognizing that there's an actual process in getting to a place where you can feel an openness to accepting the truth of who you are, the courage, the strength, the power, the resilience, the goodness, all of that. In order for you to be able to ever believe it, you have to be at a place where you can open to being able to accept it and acknowledging and preparing to be ready for that, because there's a lot of survival instincts that kick in when we start trying to accept our worthiness or that we're enough or whatever it might be. Let's see, another one. I honor with gratitude all that is courageous and good within me. And so really practicing, going through some different practices, some prompts to help you really connect with that sense of appreciation for what actually does exist within you. The stuff that has always existed within you. My struggles do not define my worthiness. You've heard me probably say that many times. And then being able to go deeper into some practices that help you really begin to trust in that. And again, with anything that you are reading or learning or any course that you might take, and again, even in therapy, you're not necessarily going to be able to completely accept and believe fully in any of those kinds of things. But the more work you do, the more opportunity you give yourself to practice, the more real all of that becomes. And there might even be a book that you've read that you thought was helpful that you find that you go back to again and again because you absorb it differently at different times. And that's what I imagine this course and even my other courses as well. But this course it's an 8-week long course with 8 different chapters. And there's, like I said, it's foundational, but it can really build on itself. You go deeper each time that you would do it. And there's so much of the healing process. What needs to happen in that healing process is incorporated into what this course is. And I priced it at a place where I'm hopeful that it will feel maybe more or easier maybe to say yes to. Now, I know that there are a variety of reasons that people choose not to do certain things, and they can all be very, very valid. But I know that for a lot of people that you have to be really conscious of your financial resources. And so this course, I've made available at $27. And that may change. Right now, it's a new course that's out there, and I might end up increasing the price. But right now, it's $27, and every week you get access to a new chapter. And I also am going to be having not a group specific to the course, but there will be some different group opportunities as well, where you can really start to kind of practice some of these things and have community to heal in as well. No matter what you're doing on your practice, you don't have to have this course. But I'm hopeful that this might be something that is accessible to you. You can download all the stuff onto your computer or your tablet or your phone. You can fill it out on your tablet if you have a PDF reader. Just make sure you save it first, otherwise you will lose everything that you write in it. You can access it on my website. So there's lots of different ways that you can do it. And I really hope for anybody who uses this, I really hope that you find it to be a helpful part of your journey. And no matter what you're using to help you along this journey, particularly in any sort of reading material or course material or anything like that, learning material, that you recognize that there is nothing about healing, no aspect of healing that you can just learn and it just naturally shift things in a forever way for you. Now, it might create a significant shift in that moment in terms of how you are able to conceptualize something, even maybe how you feel about something in that moment. But very naturally, that's likely going to be somewhat short-lived because your beliefs will take you back to those thoughts and feelings and even coping mechanisms that you've been engaged in and believing for a very long time. But the more you practice, the more you trust in those things. So be really gentle with yourself, no matter where you are in this healing process. Be gentle with yourself. Recognize that you could be 10 years into healing and you notice, and maybe it's sudden, maybe it's really not, maybe you're just beginning to notice it, that you're really struggling with something again. Maybe it's intense, maybe it's just kind of this low grade sort of thing that you're struggling with, but you notice it, and oftentimes people will feel ashamed or just get very self-critical because I shouldn't be feeling this way. I've done all this healing, or it's been so long. And when you say that to yourself, it brings up those false beliefs again. Sometimes even when you've done a lot of really great healing work, and I've talked about this for myself, that I've been on the other side of healing for a long time, but there can be circumstances in my life in which I, in a moment, can suddenly feel some pretty intense feelings about something. And what's different though is that I'm able to quickly identify often what it is, and then I'm able to, just in that identification, be able to decrease what I'm feeling about it or do what I need to do to come through it. But there are always going to be times that something comes up, and recognizing that that doesn't mean the work that you've done doesn't matter. It doesn't mean that you failed at healing. It doesn't mean that you're not capable of healing, because you have been healing. And struggling a year later, 5 years later, 20 years later, doesn't mean that the work that you did wasn't healing work. And it doesn't mean that it didn't get you to the other side. It just means that you're human and life happens, and there are many reasons that something might creep back up again. What matters is, how do you talk to yourself about that? And are you willing to get help or support if it's necessary? Or it doesn't even have to be necessary. Maybe it would just feel nice to have some of that, and you're willing to do it instead of criticizing yourself because you're struggling. So ultimately, really what I want you to take from this is that wherever you are on this journey, whether it's been 2 days or 20 years or longer, there's nothing wrong with your process. You're not failing. It has nothing to do with strength. There are a lot of factors that go into it. And when you judge yourself for not doing it as quickly or as well as you think that you should, you're reinforcing those false beliefs, which makes it harder to make progress. So really being understanding and compassionate with yourself, giving yourself grace when you do engage in the old ways of thinking or the old ways of coping, or even the old ways of struggling. That itself is an important practice in the healing journey. Everything about this healing process is part of the practice. And learning to be compassionate and gentle with yourself as you navigate through it. And if the Returning to Wholeness journal course seems like something that might be beneficial to you on your journey, then make sure to check it out. You can find a link in the description. And if you have any questions about it, feel free to let me know. It is a self-paced course. You do get access to a new chapter each week over those 8 weeks, but you can move through it at your own pace. There's no quiz or anything that you have to take. It's just something that you get to work through on your own. And I hope if you do, or even if you did join me for it when I did the membership, I do hope that it's something that you find helpful along this journey, and that it's something that you continue to return back to time and time again, as not just when you need to, not just when you're like in a place of struggle, but just as a reminder of some different things, as a regular part of your practice along the healing journey. So let me know if you've got questions, share your thoughts, anything that comes up for you in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Thanks so much for watching. And of course, if you haven't yet, make sure to subscribe and click the bell for notifications. I'll look forward to seeing you next time.